Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast, Magic is Real. This is the podcast where we talk about all things metaphysical and spiritual with a focus on near-death experiences and other spiritually transformative experiences. I am Shannon Torrance. I am a psychic medium. And today I have with me Dr. Lisa Thompson, and I have her here because she is a mystic, multidimensional healer and a spiritual teacher who's walked through the fire of loss and emerged carrying a light big enough to guide others home. Her new book, Through Loss into Light, A Journey of Grief, Healing, and the Love That Remains, is more than a message, it is a transmission. Dr. Lisa Thompson, thank you so much for being here. You have other books, and there are some other things that we're going to talk about in the spiritual realm. So I'm very excited to have you here. And thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for allowing me to be here with you. I can't wait for our conversation.
Me too. I would love to know about you. I just want to know about your background and what led you into this work. I know, unfortunately, some of it was tragedy, but I'd love to know what your spiritual beliefs may have been just growing up and in general, and if you had a spiritual upbringing or not.
Yeah, actually, I grew up in a little bit of a different kind of a household, and I don't know your background, but I know that this will resonate with you. So my mother was always into the metaphysical sciences. So she was an astrologer up until I was about age 13, and all her friends were astrologers, psychics, tarot card readers, witches. And so that was my normal realm. And we were living in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma at the time, so that was very underground in Oklahoma in the middle of the Bible Belt. And so then when I was 13, we moved from Oklahoma to Washington State to attend a spiritual school of enlightenment, where then here I am, teenager, getting immersed into the concepts of higher consciousness, things outside of this physical reality, creating your reality. And I was having some pretty extraordinary experiences with some of the different modalities and practices that we were doing at that school. And I was having regular ET contact. So these guys in the background. So yeah, my whole life has been this deep dive spiritual journey that has taken me in a lot of different directions.
Yeah, and today we're going to talk about all that. And what we'll speak to also is that even though we are spiritual, even though you and I know there is more to this life, that grief is a component of what we deal with. So I think it is important to touch on, especially in the work that we're doing in helping other people, which of course is your thing. It's mine also, is we're working to help people heal so we can have an understanding that there is more to life and also not at all minimize and really honor that grief is very real and very painful, and you can be as enlightened as you want to, but it's still gonna hurt just as much. But I would love to I'll also ask you, I grew up non-religious. My mom was spiritual, but not the way yours was. And so I wonder, I mean, she is where I get my abilities from. I know that now, but it was not really talked about very much in our house. Wasn't, and we went to the Unitarian church just so that
Mm.
we would have somewhere because we wanted to go to church, or I did. And my mom was like, well, Unitarian is what we can agree on. So let's do that. So, and why I'm sharing that is, well, you had contact with ETs. I now realize I did too. But I wonder, was it because you were so open, or is it something in your um, past life or your soul's journey? And if you can just explain that, yeah, if you can just explain that.
I would love to, because this is something that, even though I had been learning about this kind of stuff, so I'm going to be 53 in December. So for almost 40
We're the
years.
same age.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've been in this, really kind of spiritual journey for almost 40 years. And when I was having the ET experiences as a teenager, I didn't understand like why, until when I moved here. I live on the Big Island of Hawaii, and I moved here 5 years ago. And really, it's when I got here to Hawaii that, and I started under my spiritual business, I started a night sky watch UFO tour. And so, because then I'm coming out of the closet, so to speak, about, okay, I've had these ET experiences, I've met these different groups, and I had taken a psychic intuition class where I really, really got to meet them in a different way. And then I understood, oh, okay, so these groups that I am interacting with are other aspects of myself because we're all multidimensional, right? And so I now know that I'm fully on my mission. And that was part of my husband's death, like having to go through that and being like catapulted onto the timeline where there was no going back in terms of being a galactic ambassador and channeler and really honing in my ET roots. One of my modalities is traditionally called past life regression therapy. I like calling it parallel life regression because quantum level, there is no past or future. And so when I was starting to channel my first group, the Arcturians, that started happening in 2022 when I was writing my first book on the ET topic, Connection to the Cosmos. And when I started that channeling process, I realized, oh, I'm channeling myself. And what's fascinating is that that specific Arcturian that is me. So I'm a master healer in the Arcturian realm, and I'm called Arcturian Uluru. Kind of so in Australia, this has been a question that has come up in other shows where in Australia, formerly Ayers Rock, the Aboriginal name is Uluru for that sacred spot. So I met myself back in 2018, October of 2018, and but I didn't know it was me. And I didn't know like why I was meeting myself. But then again, here I moved to Hawaii. I was expanding on my spiritual healing gifts. And so what I realized when I started this channeling process was that I was essentially channeling the healing energy from the Arcturian realm from myself and receiving that here as Earth Lisa. And then, so that was healing my body, but also then propagating out to my clients and to Gaia. And then I started meeting other aspects of myself. So to date, I have, I guess, interacted, channeled 13 different higher dimensional galactic races that are all aspects of myself. And then what's even kind of crazier, this is one of my favorite things with this whole Uluru story, is that a year ago, I was part of an ET diplomacy conference. I was one of the speakers. And there was a lady who was one of the speakers who had a couple podcasts. And so I was on her solo one. Then she invited me on her co hosted one. The co host, her best friend, didn't know anything about me. But in the middle of the podcast, she recognized, she was like, I know you. She's like, you're Arcturian. I said, yeah. She said, you're a healer. I said, yeah. She said, I wrote about you in my book. And so then she sends me the PDF of her book when we get off. And when I get to the part of where she's writing about me, she like, it wasn't generic. I thought it was going to be really generic, but it was specifically Master Healer Arcturian Uluru and spelled correctly. It's like you can't make that stuff up, right?
Wow.
And so, but like they're not the group that I got to remember as a teenager. There was another group and I didn't never knew like, okay, what is the connection of all this? But the Arcturians, and you might know this, but maybe your audience doesn't, but the Arcturians reside in a much higher frequency vibration than we do here on Earth. And so they actually, even though they can project themselves physically as these blue skinned beings, they're much more energy than they are physical. And so what I discovered was the group that I met and got to consciously meet when I was 15. They were commissioned by the Arcturians to watch over me in this life as Earth Lisa, to make sure that I was on my mission. And that's a whole different story of that conscious memory. And so what's just so interesting though is that the more that I started diving into like my true purpose of being here on Earth, my husband, who was the love of my life after two really not great toxic marriages, I did deep dive healing on myself, met Skip, the love of my life. We were together for 8 years. But when I met him, even though I was doing spiritual work, I didn't have my business and I wasn't talking about ETs. And so part of his journey with me was like, oh, you're now, okay, we're doing a UFO tour, which he was cool with. But then when I really wanted to go into the deep spiritual aspect of the ET phenomena and these higher dimensional galactics, that's where he wasn't on board. He couldn't support me anymore. And that's part of what I understand our soul contract agreement to be like. Either we were maybe going to break up, even though we loved each other so much, or there was an exit point. And he did end up committing suicide for, you know, there are so many different reasons that have come through from him as to why he couldn't be here. But what he did, what he's come through many times through a lot of different mediums, is that he's like, you know how I was on the fence and didn't understand your whole like spiritual thing and understanding with the ETs? He's like, okay, it's real.
Yeah.
He's like, and now I can fully support you from the other side, even more so than I could here in the physical.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I have so many questions, and this is so multifaceted, because we are going to get into that's just the beginning of a whole other chapter of your life,
Okay.
and so we're gonna get to that. I'm curious about how you sort of discovered these other parts of yourself, or how did you know, for example, which race, which which name, um, and I think just I have an idea, but I'd love to know what your experience of that is. Is it that you had an experience,
Well,
a download, just yeah, whatever, however you want to explain it would be great.
yeah. So the first that first group that I met when I was 15, I didn't that one was like a completely different experience than what I've had now in my adult life and what I'm here to do with these groups. But what's really super cool about when I was 15 is I got it validated. Like I knew that it was a real experience. And so maybe I'll just take you on a very, very brief journey of that to then get to 2018. So when I was 15, it was my first conscious memory of being taken onto a spacecraft. And they let me remember that experience because I was emotionally mature enough and I was in the right situation at that point to actually have it validated. I was taken to Io, one of Jupiter's moons, and I was toured around what looked like a hospital facility. And the beings, there was one particular one who was guiding me around, giving me a tour. And so on this particular trip that I took with him, because and when he picked me up, he felt very familiar, like he was my friend. I had been with him before many times, but he looked very human. So what they did was they disguised themselves so that they don't scare the humans. But on this tour, I got to ask him, why are we here? Why am I here? And this is back in 1988. So what he said was, those of us that had been chosen to be brought there were being tested to see if something happened to Earth, if we could live in an environment like that or something similar. And so, since you're my age, you might recall back in our teen years, like we were like in the Cold War, the threat of World War III was pervasive in all the movies, like all the things going on. And so there was a timeline potential where something really bad could have happened.
Mhm.
Now, at the end, so I was always obsessed with animals and the weirder the better, which is so my PhD is actually in zoology, marine biology. So when at the end of the tour, I asked him if I could see what he really looked like because I was super curious as a kid. And again, just I thought I can handle anything. And so what he looked like, he was 7 feet tall. He had pure white skin, big dark eyes, and long red hair, like your red background, fire engine red, kind of red.
Cool.
And he had triads, triangles tattooed on his cheeks. So very extreme in size and
Mm.
coloration, but completely benevolent. But I could see how, that form would scare some people. So I get returned back home, and my teen mind was like, okay, that is the weirdest dream I've ever had. And now I know, we forget details within the first 10 minutes waking up if it's a dream. Um, but like for a few months, I just thought it was a dream. So I didn't tell anyone. But fast forward a few months later, I was reading Whitley Strieber's book, Communion, about his experiences of being taken by the gray ETs. And at the end of his book, he's interviewing different people. They all have the same gray experience, but one guy had a completely different story where he was telling Whitley he had been taken to a moon of Jupiter and told he was one of the chosen ones. Whitley made a little side comment that I interpreted sarcastically. I hope it isn't Io. And my body, full head to toe chills, tears coming down my face. So that was, I know, I'm like, okay, that was a real experience. So I told
Yeah.
my mom, right? So we get I'm very clairsentient. That's one of my very strong clairs. And so I went and told my mom, knowing she would believe me. And so she got really excited. And then a few days later, she introduced me to another student at our school who had formerly been very high government, who knew about the different ET races that our government knows about and works with. And so when I told him, like, he was like, okay, describe what they looked like. And when I was describing him, he's like, I don't know that race. He said, but we don't know all of them. There are so many out there. But he said, you had a real experience. So I had my own validation, but then I had that external validation. And so that planted the seed. I'm like, okay, I don't know why this is happening, but it planted the seed for now the work that I do. And so then fast forward to 2018, and this is where it gets more spiritual. I was taking a several month long course, psychic intuition course. And so October of 2018, first night of class, our teacher led us through a meditative journey to meet a spirit guide that would help us get extra information if we needed it. Now, I was already trained as a regression therapist and had met some other spirit guides, mostly humans and animals. But this time I went to a completely different realm. And in front of me were the most beautiful blue skinned beings, large bald heads, skinny bodies, and this gorgeous blue skin. And they exuded the most pure love I've ever felt. And their message to me was, you are one of us, we are one of you, we are family. And then they gave me a gift of a quartz crystal, and we were to ask if they had a name that they wanted to be called. So there was a group of them, but the one that was the spokesperson, as I mentioned earlier, gave me the name Uluru. So I didn't know. I just thought, okay, I don't know who these beings are. And even though I had these ET experiences and seen like UFOs throughout my life, I was trying to be really normal still in my life because I had this PhD in biology, and then I was in mortgage for 5 years. I had an interior design home staging business for 12 years that I was at that time still running. So I had to pretend to be very normal, right? And so, I didn't know like why I'm having meeting these beings. And then when I got here, and I started my own podcast. I'm not doing that any longer, but I had Connection to the Cosmos for 3 years. And one of my guests that I had on, who is the publisher of a couple of my books, she's been channeling Kuan Yin for over 20 years. And so I had her on the show, and we were talking about channeling. And I'm like, you should teach a channeling class. I'll take it. And so she did. And I had already started channeling through a regression session that was done on me, where my vocal channel opened up. But so that spiritual school that I grew up in was actually taught by a channeled ascended master. And for those watching, you may have heard of the Ramtha School of Enlightenment. So that's what it was. And I never, like, growing up in that channeling kind of thing, I never thought I would be a channel because it was just weird. And I didn't think that like, that was my thing. But they really wanted me to channel. And so Kira, she taught this class and it fully opened up. And then it was very shortly after that, like I knew the way that she taught the class that it was going to be the Arcturians first. It was going to be Uluru. And so I knew what that energy felt like. And then so once I got used to that energy in 2022, then the beginning of 23, they, me, said, okay, it's time to bring in some of your other groups. And then, so what they had me do was write down 12 additional groups in addition to the Arcturians. So 13 groups total. And I was like, okay, I'm just writing these names down. And so then what I did was I had scheduled sessions where I'm like, okay, this specific week, I am channeling the Andromedans. This specific week, I am channeling the Pleiadians. So I was in control of who was going to come through. And the energy and the messages were very different in terms of those different groups coming through. But at that point, I already like intuitively knew these are just aspects of myself. There's nothing to be afraid of. I know how to raise my energy to that higher vibrational level to connect with them. And whatever's going to come through is going to come through. And so, over a period of a few months, I led these 13 different sessions channeling these different groups. And that led to Wisdom of the Galactics. So, my next book that got published right after my husband passed away. So it's been a
Wow.
wild journey.
Yeah. I've been told that I was Arcturian, but my listeners, if you've been here a while, you know this story, so I apologize for repeating this 1,000 times. But because I have you here, I just would like to know your thoughts on this. So when I was like, let's see, I might have been around 10, the first time I saw a UAP in my backyard in Connecticut.
Okay.
And it was I was on the phone with a friend and we're the same age, so there was no computers, cell phones. This was like the rotary
Yeah.
phone with the coil. And I
Mhm.
looked in the back and I'm like, there's something hovering over the woods because we lived in Connecticut. So and I just thought it was a helicopter. But then I noticed it made no sound. And I just kind of stared at it and I'm like, and I was kidding because I'm 10 and I don't really have any knowledge of that. And I just said, I think it's a UFO. And then all of a sudden it just silently disappeared. And the next day my friend called and said, my mom said that it was in the paper that a bunch of people saw this thing. So didn't think much of it because I'm 10. I have other things to worry about, like Cabbage Patch Kids. And then a few years later, I was going to sleep in my room and I turned the light off, so I was wide awake, and a bright blue orb, but fully not translucent, fully
Mm.
full energy, bright blue neon orb appeared over my bed, and it had a personality. It didn't have a face, it just had like a Tinkerbell sort of a personality. It was sort of looking at me like curiously and cute. And then it went back and forth and back and forth. And I got scared because, again, we had no technology that would have created such a light. And I screamed for my mom, and it shot straight up and disappeared. And for many years, I just thought, I mean, maybe it's a lightning ball or whatever. It wasn't that. It had a whole personality. It wasn't like just
Mhm.
and so I wonder if you know anything about what that experience could have. I tried to find meaning. I wasn't spiritual then. Later in life, I revisited and I thought for a while, maybe it was spirit guides and then I realized, no, oh my God, it's all coming together. So I'm curious too, just what you know. Are the two things related? It's like, were they trying to contact me personally? I mean, I know the rest of other people saw it, but or is there some vortex, in that space, or are these just two separate things, but also what is that blue ball?
Okay, so we don't, nothing's a coincidence, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Every everything comes to us because it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you were meant to see the UFO, UAP. I'm a UFO girl still.
Yeah. The same, it's same, because that's what we've called it our whole lives.
Right. Yeah. UAP is a bait and switch kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's a whole different story. As far as the blue energy, though, I mean, it very well could have been a galactic race, but it very well could have been fairy energy, like you said, or some other kind of guide. Um,
Yeah.
and so I think you would know more of
Hmm.
what that energy probably was in terms
Yeah.
of how you felt it. The playfulness, I know the Arcturians are not very playful. I will say that. Pleiadians come across a little more playful in terms of the galactic energy. Also the Syrians, especially if it's more of the whales, dolphins kind of Syrian energy can be very playful.
Oh,
But
I just got chills when you said that down
okay.
my leg. I
And
just got like,
and actually, yeah, so I just did too.
okay,
So,
I literally just felt spirit tingles go all the way down my leg. And
okay.
normally spirit gets me up on the right side of my head and goes down the right side of my body, but it was on my left thigh, which is really
Okay.
interesting. So different energy. Keep
Yeah.
going, please.
Very. Yeah. Okay. So the Syrians. And the Syrians, they show up as blue energy like the Arcturians do as well. And actually, they're one of my strongest groups. So the Arcturians are my primary group that's the closest bleed through from a parallel life. But the Syrians, I've been able to experience multiple lives as different kinds of Syrians. As a bird person, the whales and dolphins I've always connected with. Again, marine
Mm.
biology was kind of my background. Um, but then also I was a genetic engineer as a Syrian, helping to upgrade the human body. So I'm one of those ETs that came and tinkered with us here on Earth as well. And yeah, so I think Syrian, based on your response, and I got that same
I
response.
got, I mean, I wasn't expecting it or any kind of definitive answer, but I think that was it. And then the other thing is, um, what is it? Oh, when you said tinkering, when they're tinkering, what are they tinkering with and why?
Okay, so we have up to 22 different ET races in our DNA. And so, okay, and for if anyone that I ever like was in academics with, I went to University of Chicago, had a joint position at the Field Museum, hardcore academics, right? And we were in the evolutionary biology field. And so so at the Field Museum at the time where I had my office, so in the late 90s, we had a display for the public called The Missing Link. And it was these humans, from Lucy all the way up to Homo sapiens. And this idea of the missing link of, okay, we have this major transition in physiology and anatomy from one Homo group to another Homo group without any explanation, no like intermediate kind of group. And we also, again, this might have changed. I've been out of academia for over 20 years, but back again in the 90s, the idea of junk DNA, the DNA that they didn't understand, right? And so what I understand now from all the things from my ETs and then all the spiritual stuff that I understand is that those missing links in our human evolution are where the ETs came and modified our bodies to ultimately upgrade the body to be able to run more consciousness, hold more energy. And so back when I was doing that, it was during the time of the building of the pyramids in Egypt. And it was far longer ago than what the archaeologists say. But so what I got to see was okay, so my group, we were in our spaceship sending down this sound frequency energy to the humans to upgrade and modify the DNA. Then there were others of us on the ground, boots on the ground, teaching the humans how to do this sound thought levitation of these megalithic stones to put them into place. And so that was pretty cool to be able to experience that. We also what I got to see as part of that life was that my group, who was sending the sound frequency, we had another experiment going on a different planet with other kind of human type beings, where rather than actively teaching them how to use this technology with this increased consciousness, that other group we just left alone. So we upgraded them, but we let them just stay in natural harmony. And what was fascinating was that they actually did better as as uh, beings on their planet, stayed completely in harmony with nature. So think kind of Avatar.
Hmm.
Yeah, just like that is they technology was not their thing, where us giving these humans here on earth this technology, ultimately what that did was it created power hierarchy struggles within the humans, and ultimately like the crash of Atlantis and other things like that. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I mean that's a whole, I know we could go on about that forever and ever, or I could anyway, but I'm always deep diving and rabbit holing on this stuff. So yeah, so let's cut to 2018. So you had finished your book already,
Nope.
had you? You hadn't finished it yet. Okay.
Oh no, I hadn't even start. So in 2018, I was I had started my spiritual business back in 2017. And so
Okay.
my original modality was past life regression therapy. And I was trying to simultaneously run my spiritual business with my design business. And so, actually, the very first book I wrote was in 2018, but it was merging design with science with spiritual concepts. So it's called Sacred Soul Spaces, Designing Your Personal Oasis. So creating multidimensional environments to support whatever you wanted to manifest. So then I started taking that psychic class in October of 2018, and that's when I that night I connected with the Arcturians, but over the period of the several months in the class, I connected with Andromedans and Blue Avians and others. And again, I'm like, I don't know why these ETs are coming through. And I was living in Olympia, Washington at the time. That's where I mostly grew up. And again, I was still trying to be normal. So I couldn't share with the world my ET experiences, because if I know that my real estate agents and builders, they already thought the past life regression stuff was weird. And so I knew if I'm like coming out of like, oh yeah, I've had ET experiences and now I'm having these other experiences with them, things would have changed in my business.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so then 2019, I've written a lot of books, but 2019 I'm still in Olympia, and that's I had already married my husband. So we got married December 22nd of 2018. And then so 2019, I'm writing about our relationship and how I had done this deep dive healing to meet him. And I thought, okay, that's going to be like the end of the story with him, right? Like, okay, here we are happily ever after.
I actually was just about to ask you how he came into your life. I felt compelled to ask you that if you want to
Okay.
share. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So he was in the mortgage industry for most of his adult life. And I had this interior design home staging business. And so we were both part of the Realtors Association. And he had moved from Tacoma to Olympia, and we were volunteering for Realtor Community Service Day. We were painting over graffiti in downtown Olympia, and we happened to be on the same paint team. But what's fascinating, so there's a little more to that though, because when I saw him, um, I had never seen him before in this physical form, but when I saw him, I'm like, God, I know you. Like, I recognize you. And I didn't know how, but I was like this magnet attracted to his energy. And so we didn't get put on the same team. I actually followed him because I just, And it wasn't like he was like the most handsome man or anything
Mhm.
like that. It was just this like, God, I know you. So I went and we talked the whole time, the several hours we're painting over this graffiti. And he was going through a divorce at the time, and I was finalizing my divorce. And he was not in any position to date anyone. And he kept trying not to date me for a long time. But I invited him to my divorce party, and so we became like basically best friends where we were dating but not dating, because I was not gonna do anything with him until he like actually was like, yes, we're dating. And so anyway, that was several months. So from May of 2015 to January of 2016, we were in that friend zone phase. And then he knew I was going to get tired of waiting for him and the game. And so January 1st, he had flown to Arizona with a group of friends to watch the Seahawks game down there. And he's like, I told everyone that we're dating. I was like, oh, okay. Now it's official. Yeah. And he was one who never wanted to get married again either, because he had been with his ex for like 24, 25 years, very long time. And then 3 years in, then he was like, well, what if we did a spiritual wedding in Thailand? Would you like that? I was like, yeah, sign me up. I don't need the legal paper at all. Yes, let's go to Thailand. So we did. So in December of 2018, we got married in Thailand. And then it was like a psychological thing for him, because when we got back, then he was like, I think we should actually make this legal. And so then we legally got married June 22nd. 22 is his favorite number. June 22nd of 2019. Then we made it official. And then we moved here to Hawaii December of 2020 in the middle of COVID.
Great. I just like to know how, well, I like to know how people met, but I also think it definitely informs the rest of your, or just the tone of your relationship. And like you said, how you knew that your souls had met before. And I
Hmm.
think that is important. And also just how we find these soulmates out in the world and synchronicities. And I just assumed there must have been some sort of a synchronicity because these relationships are not by accident. And I've had that before with recognition with someone, and it wasn't about, oh my God, look at that man. It was just like, we just looked at each other and we're like, I know you kind of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Well, and I have friends too that it's like, oh, it's good to see you again.
Yeah,
Here,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. So I just think that's beautiful. So continue with your story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, and this then plays into, so in Olympia, if anyone's familiar with the whole Pacific Northwest, like rain and clouds 9 months out of the year. And so he thought he had seasonal depression. And so every time it would start getting darker and darker, it'd be like dark at 4 p.m. And then it, wouldn't get sunny out until maybe 7, or not even sunny, just light out with the gray skies. But he would just, have this massive kind of depression going on. And so in the middle of COVID, so again, he was in the mortgage industry and his work went virtual. And so we had a 10-year plan to be snowbirders so that we could get him into the sun. And every year during the winter, we would take a vacation to sun to get him into the sun. But like May of 2020, my daughter just throws out, I don't want to live in Olympia anymore. I want to move to California and be a surfer girl, live in Malibu. I was like, I would not move to California. I said, I'd move to Hawaii. And that just came out of my mouth. And he looked at me and he's like, I'd move to Hawaii. And so we had a 2-year plan that got bumped up to 6 months later. We bought our house here, sight unseen, because it was two weeks mandatory quarantine before you could tour around the island. So, both of us being in the real estate industry, I knew, okay, if I see a home and see the video and we get the home inspection, like it's all good. So we bought our home and then moved here. And I thought that getting him into the sun was going to help. And it did for a while, and till it didn't. And so I was thriving here as meeting like my galactic soul sisters and these other things, experiences, and really understanding, oh, this, I actually am really here to be a galactic ambassador. Oh, okay. And um, I let go of the design company. And so I was really thriving, and he was not. And so, for a good three, almost 3 years, you know, we really, we tried to make it work for him. And then I was leading a galactic retreat, and that's when he did it, when I was away from home. But I am the one who discovered him, unfortunately. I mean,
Goodness, I'm so sorry.
fortunately, I'm glad it wasn't my daughter.
Yeah, but I'm so sorry. That is extremely traumatic, and so much compassion for anyone who's struggling with depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, any kind of mental illness that is just so difficult. I think we all know someone who suffered similarly, so I just wanted to extend my condolences and compassion for him as well.
Okay, so I'm leading the galactic retreat, and I had rented condos in our neighborhood for me and the ladies to stay, at these condos while we're doing retreat. And so I ended up like, oh, I forgot eggs at home. I need to go home and get eggs for the morning so I can cook for them. And so that when I came home, that's when I discovered him. He had been, but a few hours before, he had been texting me like, hey, I want to come over to the condo tonight. I want to see you. And I didn't answer him back because we were doing a night sky watch. And so right when we got done, I'm texting him back and he's not answering. Then I'm calling him. And, that wasn't really like him. And so then I remember the eggs. So I'm like, oh, this is my opportunity to go home and get him to come over to the condo. And so again, that did not happen. I got the eggs, but um, what was really interesting was that night back at the condo. So after the police and all the things, um, I'm back at the condo, starfished in my bed, like just full spread out. And I'm like, team, like, help.
Yeah.
And so in when I'm asking for that, all this blue energy just started swirling all around the room. So I could see it, I could feel it. And so I knew that that was, my galactic team really working energetically on me. And then the next morning I wake up, and the ladies, they gave me some space. They were over in the other condo, and I'm out on the lanai, and I'm talking to the trees that are right there. And I'm like, did it really, like, I'm like, okay, I knew there was a major like timeline shift, or like anchoring me into a very specific timeline. I'm like, did it really have to be this extreme? Like, couldn't it have been a gentle thing? And the answer I got back very clearly was, it had to be this extreme. It had to be. Like, it was for you to be doing what you're doing. You couldn't be held back in the 3D world anymore if you're teaching about 5D. Like, he really, and because one of the things was that my team had told me back in 2021, completely stay out of politics, stay out of anything polarized, just observe from the higher perspective, really create your own environment so you can come from a place of love and be a clear channel for us. And my husband, though, he was completely into that polarized reality. He loved talking about politics, and he loved watching the news and all the things. And then he had all his 3D work stuff that was just, it would bring his energy down. And then he'd be angry, not at me, but at just work and life. And it's like, I can't be in this energy and do the work I'm supposed to do. And so, even though it was a really hard message to hear, it was one I knew to be true, of like, okay, so it was either going to be something like this. And what he has also, again, shared from the other side is that I saved him multiple times. Like, he was going to choose an earlier exit point.
Yeah.
And a few years before he died, I kept having these premonitions that he was not going to live a long life. And I told my best friend, and I'm like, I don't know why I'm having these. these thoughts, and I thought, okay, he's either going to get killed on his motorcycle or create some disease.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was in his field.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I understand what you mean. I when we say in excuse me, in their field, do you think this is just sort of a side question? Do you think that his soul already chose that in advance, or do you think it was more that he sort of allowed things into his field? And I'm not, and this comes with no judgment or blame.
Yeah.
Just curious what you think about that.
That's a really good question. I think he probably did like that this was just his sole agreement.
Yeah.
He came here to play certain roles for people, including me,
Hmm.
and then his job was done. Like
Yeah.
he got me here to Hawaii. I wouldn't have been able to come here to Hawaii and buy this house and do what I'm doing without that support.
Right. And that's what you were told as
Yeah.
well. And yeah, I know
Yes.
that's really hard for people to understand. So I know
Yeah.
I'm delicate about it because I know people don't like to hear things like that sometimes. And it, like I said, there's no judgment, no blame. It's just what it is. But I know
Right.
that from a 3D perspective, it can be hard to understand why these things happen.
Right.
Um, and yeah, I know I had a client who was married to the love of his life, and his partner passed away, and he just couldn't move on. I mean, which I wouldn't expect anyone to move on, but he was really having difficulty moving forward. And what his husband had told me time and time again, and I knew when the time was right to share it, was okay, here's why this happened. It's, you were abused as a child. You've become codependent. You don't know how to be self-loving without him.
Mhm.
And you're he's the only person that makes you feel can make you feel that makes you feel safe. And you needed to, and it all transpired that way. I've known him for years, and it's just all he's like, I see it, I get it now. But it's really hard for
Yeah.
people to say, oh, great, so my loved one sacrificed their life for this. But I just think it's important to, to be delicate about it, but also to acknowledge that for anyone who thinks I could have changed it or what could I have done, especially in cases of suicide,
Right.
first of all, it's not your fault, but it never is anyone's fault. But also sometimes that was just the soul's journey, and that was just something that had to happen. So, um,
Yeah.
now as a spiritual person, this, it doesn't make it any easier. This is still a
No,
traumatic, a traumatic experience.
because we're still here to be Earth human and live this human life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are the practical things, and like I have a lot of friends that are psychic mediums, and so my teacher that I had learned from, she's the first one that I'm like, is he ready to come through yet, or is it too soon? And she's like, oh my God, he's right here. No, he's
Yeah.
ready. Like, because some people I think there's misconception
Yeah.
among the spiritual world of suicide in terms of like how fast maybe they process or not. Because I know some people think, well, it's going to take a very long time for that soul to get schooled and like their energy to come through or be balanced. And I'm like, but all timelines are existing simultaneously, so it doesn't have to be like that, right?
That's my experience as well.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
And
The souls, they're immediately on the quote unquote other side. They're immediately there. And people who take their lives are not sent to a dark place. They are light. They are sent back to their light source. They
yeah,
are not punished. They've
right.
not committed a crime, which,
Exactly.
they had a really difficult time
Yeah.
suffering in this world, and it was very hard and very dense for them. And they are welcomed back with love.
Hmm.
And, the only thing I ever hear is, I'm sorry I put you through that. I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yes. And so I'm really glad that you have that same
Yeah.
experience. And so when he came through though, because he's like, I know you're angry with me. And then he was like, you're not going to want to hear this, but he's like, it's okay to be happy sooner than later.
Mm,
You still need to live your life. And he's like, And he's like, I know you're not going to want to hear this, but you need romance in your life that adds to your creativity. And you still have a lot of life to live, essentially. And, hearing that within a week of him passing, I'm like, you're right. I don't want to hear that. Now,
Yeah.
it came through other psychic mediums too, friends of mine as well. Like he was pretty constant in his message. And so what's interesting is that, and he's like, you're not going to have to go through a bunch of losers. I'll bring you your next person, which did he really bring me the next person? I mean, everything's soul contract agreement. I think they're like,
Yeah.
okay, tag, you're it.
Right.
The
Yep.
other side. And so, and the person that came into my life, again, it was one of those situations where within like a day of meeting him, it was this instant soul recognition, like,
Mm.
oh my, we've had multiple lives together and in sacred union with each other. And I mean, it was like this very quick, just it felt comfortable and natural. And even from him, he didn't have the memories that I did or that recognition, but he's like, there's nothing weird about this at all, like
Mm.
energetically. So um we dated for 8 months, for now over a good year plus. We've been in friend status. He's my best friend. And so we're partners in a little bit different way than what I thought was going to happen. But it really was like the baton was handed to him of like, okay, now it's your job to get Lisa through this next phase
Mm-hmm.
of this grief. Because so my husband, he killed himself out in our private courtyard space. And what Isaiah has done is he's helped me transform that death space
Mm.
into a beautiful place of growth where we have hydroponic garden tables. And so we've got all of this life that is growing there. And we've completely transformed the courtyard into my personal oasis.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So transmuting the energy is really important.
I was going to ask you about that because I know one of the that was one of the things, the topics that was sort of suggested to me is, well, let's talk about your book and kind of why you wrote it, who it's for, what
Okay.
its message is, and anything you want to share about it. And that includes how to transmute pain into personal power.
So what's fascinating is I because I've written other books and I never thought I was going to be an author ever. Like I did not like writing when I was in college or even grad
Yeah.
school. So, but then I just somehow I write what I know. That's what I've come to understand. I write what I know. So, right after he passed, it came through one of my guides or him. I don't know, but I was like, you're going to be writing a book about this. And then one of my spiritual mentors, she also was like, you're going to write a book about this and you're going to help a lot of people to understand it from a different perspective than maybe what some of the traditional grief counselors might write about. And so that was already planted. And so when I was going through this process of this emotional roller coaster, when I would have these epiphanies or feel like, oh my God, I just need to talk to him, I would turn my voice memo on my phone and would record myself just talking, just telling him whatever I needed to say, or just having these spiritual epiphanies, these aha moments, and just sharing all that. And I knew, okay, maybe these memos, I wanted to remember what I was actually feeling. As because when, now 2 years later, I am in a very different space, right, than I was in the depths of it. And so I wanted to be able to remember and have it really fresh of like, oh, yeah, that's what I was feeling in that particular moment. So that when I was writing it, it would be authentic, right? Because we can have all these great spiritual understandings and it doesn't touch people
Hmm.
where they are in their grief in that way. And so I had those voice memos. And then I started working on my other book, Awakening to Your Multidimensional Self. And so I was working on them both at the same time. And I was kind of waiting to see how the Isaiah story was going to play out to,
Yeah.
in order to finish this one. But back in May of this year, I was working with Lisa Williams, psychic medium Lisa Williams.
Love her
Yeah.
so much.
And so she has a newer podcast where some of the shows she does, she will do mediumship readings for people.
Oh, sign me up.
And my best friend happens to be her personal assistant. And so I was like, Jen, would she have me on the show? She's like, you'd be perfect. So I'm on the show and in the middle of the reading, and she's like, well, I can't tell her what to do. But she's like, he's saying, finish the book, finish the book. So then I was like, and she's like, do you know what I'm talking about? I'm like, yeah, I do. And so it had, Awakening had come out January of this year. So there was space, like that book was done. That one wanted to be birthed first. But then I was in a space of like, okay, you want me to finish the book? I need your help.
Mm.
You got to help me with this, figuring out how to put it together. Like, what is the message of it? And so I had all those voice memos. I had already started writing it. And then, I just had inspiration of the direction of it. So really part of it is my very vulnerable, authentic, like, I'm in like this really dark space. But then what was I doing to get myself out of it? I was voice memoing. I was like playing his Depeche Mode Pandora station and dancing around my bedroom to release the energy. I was going to the beach every single day to release that energy and have that emotional healing of the water, the salt water. And I was purging actually his stuff energetically, like moving it out of my space. Because again, as a designer and then energy kind of worker, I understand how the energy can get trapped and we need to move it, right? From our physical body, from our physical space. And so I was doing all these things. But then I also, I wanted to show, okay, what is it like to start dating again when you've gone through this really vulnerable thing? And so there are some kind of funny stories about that. And and then ultimately of like, okay, this clearly anchored me in my journey in being a galactic ambassador. There's no turning back. Like I can't hide who I am here anymore. We are truly all multidimensional beings. And so now I understand it even deeper after his passing. And so he passed September of 2023. My mother passed February of 24, and my cat passed March of 24 as well. So, like, back to back to back. So it's like, okay, well, I have a whole like spirit team that I didn't have before,
Yeah.
plus my galactics. And then so part of it was just to show like sometimes these things that we deem really like horrible happening in our lives, or that it's happening for us
Mhm.
in a lot of ways. It's not to us. And but also, like you said earlier, sharing the message of there's nothing that I could have done differently to keep him here alive. There's nothing that his friends or family could have done. And I know some of them, even to this day, I think have deep guilt about like they didn't do enough, they didn't reach out. He's a twin brother who Skip had called his twin brother and left a voicemail that afternoon before the evening, just a few hours before he did this. And I don't know, like he had called a whole bunch of people that day. He'd called the plumber and called the handyman and was making all these plans. He had made plans with his friends to do golf and go running and play pickleball on the weekend. He was texting me to come over to the condo. So he was making all these plans. And then it didn't happen. But so, like, his brother I think, probably deep guilt still of like he didn't return his call till the next morning after it was already too late. And then the brother's trying to blame me. Well, what's going on? What happened? Like, and
Right.
and so when people are placing blame and projection onto the person that's going through that as well. So I wanted people to understand, okay, like it's not you, like it wasn't me. And then what helped and what didn't help, because sometimes people think they're helping by coming at you with these like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, and like these tears, and I'm just like, energetically, I'm like, oh, I can't be around you. And then one of my friends, um she I've had to put strong boundaries. I haven't seen her in a very long time, but she came at me and she's like, this is going to suck for a really long time. And I'm like, you know what? That's actually not my perspective. That's not the energy
Yeah.
that I want to be in this. It's not. I'm going to transmute this. I can do it in a different way than what you think it has to be done. And then other
Yeah.
people, oh, you're going to have to sell your house and you're not going to be able to take care of yourself. And I'm like, you don't know me very well.
Other people,
You don't.
yeah, projecting their, yeah, how they would feel or what they would
Yes,
do. And I know, and we both know they mean well.
they do.
And it's just, it's kind of, it always reminds me of John Locke in Lost. Don't tell me what I can't do. I stopped speaking to a friend because he told me all the things I had planned were delusional and you need to get a grip. And guess what? Every single one of the things manifested. And, but I didn't even say anything. I just thought, I can't be friends with somebody who is telling me what I can't do and
Yeah,
who sees me from that limited perspective. And yeah, it's not. I mean, there were other reasons, there was that was like the main reason, but it was also like I don't want friends who aren't supportive. I
yeah.
don't want people telling me that my dreams are delusional, and that's not helpful. And I'm not shaming anybody for things they say because it is hard to know what to say when somebody passes, especially in a tragedy and nobody knows what to do or what to say. And sometimes it's better to say something than nothing. And then you might say the wrong thing, but also it is true that we have to we it really doesn't help to be told that this is going to be your experience because then we tell ourselves that story that this is how it's going to be. Thank you
Yeah,
for acknowledging that grief sucks. It really does suck. And also it doesn't mean my whole life is over. I have to give up my house. I am going to be a weeping widow for the next 10 years, or whatever it is. And yeah, that's really,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, there is no right thing to say, or everyone's different. Everyone's triggers are going to be different.
They are. Everyone's
No.
journey is different. And that's partly again why I wanted to write the book too, is just to show there are different ways to navigate this. There's no right or wrong. So wherever someone is in that process, it's perfect for whatever they're going through. And it's okay to put boundaries on people, like
Yeah.
massive boundaries. If they are not energetically supporting you, like, does this feel good to me or not?
Yeah.
And yeah, so because I think sometimes like even his family, they were so angry with me because I didn't put a funeral together. And I'm like, that's not who we were. We
Right.
like that your brother didn't want a funeral, you know.
Yeah.
He wanted to be cremated, and I had a celebration of life on the beach, and anyone was invited to that. And then
Yeah.
but they were so mad that I didn't put on this formal thing for the family, like back on the mainland. I'm like, that's not my job. You think it's my job?
Yeah.
My
And
job.
that's another thing spirits tell me all the time. Souls tell me it doesn't matter how you laid me to rest. It's for you. It's not for me. I don't care. Families will fight. He would have wanted this. He would have wanted that. His
Yeah.
body is no longer part, it doesn't belong to him. And so a soul is not concerned with, all they care about is you and how you're coping. If you need to put their the remains at a cemetery so you can go visit and feel connected, that is great if it works for you. You
Mhm.
can cremate, you can scatter ashes, you can never put the ashes anywhere. You can say, no, thanks, I don't want to pay for the ashes. And you can move on in any way you want and just, grieve in your own way. It doesn't matter to the soul how But when somebody does a beautiful thing for them, they will say, thank you. I
Mhm.
saw that and I really appreciated the memory. But also, they're not at the cemetery, they're with you. So if that makes you, if that's someplace where you can go and meditate, that's beautiful, but it's for you and not them.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. And because I did have so many different kinds of like psychic and medium sessions, I put those in the book as well because
Yeah.
I wanted those messages from the other side to come through loud and clear. Messages to me, but also in general,
Yeah.
like what you're sharing of it's very different when you're on the other side.
Yeah.
Very different.
You've
So,
gone home,
yeah.
you're where you started from, you borrowed this body, you had beautiful experiences, the love remains, the connections remain, but the
Yeah.
body is discard doesn't it's just a shell. And your connections aren't. Your connections remain and there's always love there and you're connected by an invisible sort of we all are though. I want to say
Yeah.
umbilical cord,
Mhm.
by strings and a web. And so you're connected to me, I'm connected to you, and we don't go anywhere. I just got chills too, and more chills about that as well. And that we aren't separate. Is there anything? Oh gosh, I just got major chills again. So I might attribute that to Skip, which is my dad's nickname growing up was Skip too, Skipper. Yeah, and so yeah, I'd love for you to share as we close this conversation. I could talk with you for hours, but excuse me, I just choked on my own spit. Just what is it that you want people to know in closing, and anything you'd like to share
Okay.
about your
So,
book, any your
um,
services, anything that parting words, anything you'd like to share.
well, okay. This is probably multifaceted, but every one of us, we are multidimensional beings. We have infinite number of timelines, infinite number of lives. And so even though this earth costume feels it's very real, right? We're here to experience being in this earth costume, but it isn't who we really are, right? We are energy, we are spirit, our souls, we are connected to source. We, like you just said, we're all connected to each other. And so, even though the physical body might have an expiration date, we don't. And we can always connect with our past loved ones. We can always connect with our spirit teams, whether that's our angelics, our elementals, our fairies, our galactics, whoever. We all have the ability to do this and to remember like who we really are. And even to when we're connecting, realize, oh, okay, do I want to pull forth this talent or ability from this realm, like my Arcturian realm, pulling forth that healing ability? We can do that once we know how multidimensional we really are. And so I think that part of that is why my Awakening to Your Multidimensional Self book had to come out first before this one. Because I had like writing that, I was like, oh, yes, we really are multidimensional. And if anyone's had, past life, parallel life regressions or QHHT sessions or anything like that, like then you understand you're more than just this one life, right? And so the more that you can understand that, and that we're here to be human, then we can play in this earth realm a lot easier. It becomes more fun and not so dense and heavy. And so I do have a couple of free offers for people that I would love. So I have my multidimensional awakening kit that is a 5-piece meditation bundle plus an ascension workbook, and that is at awakenactivatenow.com. And then my new book, Through Loss and Delight, comes out. Um, by the time this comes out, it'll be still, so it's coming out Sunday, November 2nd. And when my mentor and I, when we did the numerology on that, it's a master number 22, which is Skip's favorite number. He was born on April 22nd. We got married December 22nd and June 22nd. Like 22 is an important number for him. And we didn't even plan that when she was like, "How about this date?" And then we did the numerology, and she's like, 22. I'm like, "Thanks, Skip."
Wow, that's
And
so
so
cool.
it's like, because I told him, I'm like, "If you're making me write this book, you're gonna have to help me. Like, you're gonna have to guide some of this."
That's confirmation.
Yeah. And so for those that might be going through the grief process or have any friends or family going through it, then I have another free gift that's related to that in the book. And so that is my The Love That Remains healing kit. And so that's at thelovethatremains.com. But
Thank you.
my book's available on Amazon on 11/2. All my other books are available on Amazon as well under Lisa Thompson, PhD. Um, I have a Lemurian retreat coming up November 11th that I'm doing. It's an online retreat that I'm doing with a few friends. So if you do either of those free gifts, you'll get on my email list and get information about that. There's elements of the retreat being free, and then premium access, there is a paid portion. And then the healing, and I feel like I'm just blabbing, but
Yep,
so
it's a lot of great stuff, so you must share.
um between my Arcturians, my Syrians, and I didn't even talk about my mantis, the praying mantis beings. So those are my three primary groups that come through the healing. And I'm going to be teaching my Infinity Healing Method certification program starting in 2026 and teaching people how to access their own galactic team to bring through that healing energy. You might have the same groups that I do, you might have different groups, but basically, you're going to be really learning how to channel your own energy healing for yourself and for others.
How
So
cool.
stay tuned for that.
Oh, definitely I will. And I know many others will. Thank you so much for your time, Lisa, and sharing your experience. And this is I like I said, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. And I'm really excited to see what comes next for you. I just really appreciate your time and your energy.
Well, thank you so much, and for the platform that you have to talk about these kind of topics. It's
My
very,
pleasure.
yeah.
It's my obsession. Thank you so much, Dr. Lisa Thompson.